Everybody, welcome back to Watch and Carry. So in today's video we have another modified Casio project. The watch you see in front of you is the Casio, should be here on the back, W-217H. Very affordable watch. Can be easily found on Amazon, and I'll put the link down below. This is coming from a friend off of Instagram. This is TJ. He belongs to, or he's the owner of, a really cool Instagram page. It's called @thegrimpocket, and I've also put that in the description. He's got lots of cool gear, including watches and other EDC items. And anyways, we met through a common chat group where we talk about EDC and watches, and he had asked me about some of the Casios I've modified and wanted to get his watch done also. So I said, yeah, for sure, I'll go ahead and hook him up. And he wanted a specific type of filter that he saw in one of my posts. So I had posted this a while ago. This is a brand new, never worn watch. I got this watch a while back and just put this filter on it, but never really used it. It's a little bit too small for my taste. But it was a fun project, and this is the A158WE. And here I've thrown on a filter by Lee that kind of gives this really cool luminescent effect, especially when you turn it there to the side. And you can see I'm not pushing any of the buttons for the backlight. It's a really cool filter. This type of filter is called the Cosmetic line of filters, and there are several colors within the Cosmetic line. They all give that same appearance of kind of like hazing out the, or not really hazing out, but kind of adding a little bit of a smoked or iced type layer to the indices that you see, while also giving off a kind of luminescent effect, especially when you turn it to the side. So this is the Cosmetic Aqua Blue. TJ wanted this for this watch, but unfortunately I'm out of that one. But I have some other colors that I'm going to send to him so that way he can change up the look of his own watch. And then I'm actually going to install one for him today, so that way it's ready to go. You can see here we have Cosmetic Emerald. It's kind of a green. It looks more blue on the camera, but it's actually more of like a spearmint winter green in person. Cosmetic Silver Moss. You have the Cosmetic Rouge, Silver Rose, Peach, and then I don't know if I showed that already, but the blue, which I'm out of, which is on that silver watch I showed you, that's the one right there. All right, so to do this mod, I actually have never worked on this watch before, so I'm hoping it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to open up the watch, take out the module, kind of see where we can position our filter, and then reassemble everything again. Quick wrist check today. I'm wearing a Timex 3 GMT. This is the silver version. It's a quartz movement, and I've put it on this Nike 22mm threaded bracelet. Really cool. You got that black and blue Batman style bezel. Fantastic watch with that typical Timex lume, or indigo, I should say. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. We're going to take a microfiber cloth, flip this over, get to those screws on the back. Now you'll see this is a brand new watch that TJ sent me, but you'll get this typical residue from the factory. And so you can do there is just kind of either buff it out, or you can take a little bit of alcohol on a microfiber cloth and just kind of clean that up. We'll just do a rough clean with that and kind of touch up everything a little bit later. Take a small Phillips here, go to these 4 screws. And then for today, we're going to be hopefully using some double-sided tape rather than the typical super glue that you've seen. Don't recommend this micro screwdriver, by the way. I've been using it for a while with no problems, but now we're having some issues here. The part where you grip here, the black part, spins freely on this blue barrel, and so you're not really getting a lot of grip to twist. It's kind of just rotating in place. So I have to put some glue underneath that later. All All right, so now we got those screws off. We'll set these to the side. Just make sure you don't lose them because these are pretty hard to find in your local hardware store. All right, let's get to the back of this and see what's inside. Okay, so I always like to start with a little bit of anatomy so that way you kind of know where things go. I'm taking a look at this O-ring here. I can already see that there's a notch here at the very top for that O-ring. So you can tell that while it does look symmetrical left and right, we do have to position this O-ring in a certain orientation. And you can see when I lift up on that O-ring, sure enough, there's a little nub right here that will have to go to the 12 o'clock position. So we'll set that to the side. Okay, now we have the module, which is what sits inside the case here. Usually with these Casios, you kind of go for the 6 or the 12 o'clock position. Look for a little notch there. Use something non-metal and skinny and just kind of insert that in and gently kind of pry up. Okay, so that's moving pretty easily. If it's kind of having a hard time lifting up, do a little bit on the right, do a little bit on the left, and then gradually lift it up. You don't want to force anything. Okay. So now we'll remove the module, and then I'm immediately going to put the case back on just so we can limit dust getting into the case. And I just want to look at the module itself because it's the first time I'm working on this watch. Okay, so one single piece for that display. You have your typical battery bay here on the back. I don't have any springs that can easily come off, which is important to notice, but I do have a spring here on the back. So if you do take apart this module, which I will not be doing in this video, just make sure you replace it in that orientation. That spring, by the way, makes the connection between the module and the case back that gives the watch sound. The sound and the speaker is actually on the case back, and you need that spring to make that connection. All right, so everything looks pretty good here. Now, we don't have a truly flat surface over here. It's kind of raised in certain portions. So I don't really want to put my filter here because it's going to be hard to adhere it. I'm going to want to stick it more on the inside of the masking. So we're going to put the module to the side, kind of lift up here on the case back. There's that speaker, by the way, that circle. And then we have a really nice surface to work on over here. So we have a really big, fat, thick border around. Perfect for me to put some double-sided tape and to cut out a filter and just basically stick it right on there. So it should be pretty simple. And actually in this case, we might even get away with not having to use tape. So when you have something more complicated like a Casio World Time where you have several different cutouts here for the masking, and you're choosing different colors. Actually, a better example would be something like this. I have different colors here. It makes more sense to use glue or double-sided tape because you don't want those filters kind of falling all over the place. There is a little bit of pressure when you reassemble the watch that helps keep everything in place, but when you do a battery change on your watch, eventually you're going to lose that pressure and it can easily shift filters around. So you usually want to use some kind of adhesive, but when you have a big border like this, you can just cut a really fat filter and the raised edges of the perimeter are going to keep it in place. So I'm just going to stick with what's simple. We're not going to add any tape. That's also going to make it easier for TJ to switch filters when he needs to, because all he has to do is flip the watch over and the filter will pop out there. So let's go to our cosmetic filter here, Cosmetic Emerald. Let's go ahead and turn it out like that. Okay, let's see if we can get away with this little sliver here. And no, I think it's just a little bit too narrow, so we will cut that part away. And then we'll just work with this part here. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of roughly eyeball this from the top down and just cut it a little bit larger than we need. These filters, by the way, this is a sample pack, so that's why the amount is so small. But if you like a particular filter from Lee's, you can look up the code for that filter, the number and the code name, and then you can go to eBay or Lee's website and order a much larger sheet of that. Okay, so now let's put the filter on the top, and then we'll just roughly kind of cut out where we need this. So actually, let's start from the bottom here. Okay, and we'll cut right about there. And then we'll cut across. Let's put the case back on. Again, I am out of gloves, but if you have, nitrile non-powdered gloves, that would be best, so you can minimize fingerprints. For me, I'm just going to wipe my fingerprints off before I fully install this on. Lift up on the case back again. A quick blast of air and just kind of position this here like so. So just a rough fit that looks pretty good. Okay, we have to trim now these sides here. Okay, so I have a little bit to take off on the top and the bottom, so we'll do that again. Because the internal frame that I'm measuring this for can't be removed, it just makes it a little bit trickier to get the right size, because you kind of have to do it from the top down rather than just taking it out and measuring it precisely. Okay, let's go ahead and you see those teeth at the top and the bottom? I kind of want to make sure the filter fits right in between there. So that looks good. So I think we got the width or the height right. Let's go ahead and take out a little bit from the sides as well. So that looks pretty good. And you can see here we have these kind of rounded corners on the left and the right. Let's see if we have to actually cut those. Actually, that's perfect. So the filter really just sits right there, and you can see that the corner of the filter is kind of pushing up against that turn in the frame. So the frame there is really kind of holding those corners of the filter nicely on the top and the bottom. Now what I also want to do is I kind of want to move this filter as high up as possible, okay, to those two teeth on the top, and see how high I can move this filter easily. Because in case there is, you're shaking your wrist a lot, you're playing sports or doing some activity, I want to make sure that this filter doesn't travel too far up or too far down, and then it leaves some areas uncovered. So I'm pushing lightly here, and it's not moving up, again, because those corners of the frame are kind of preventing it. I'm going to push from down. We move just a tad, but again, I'm still fully covered. And then, of course, left and right, there's really nowhere to move because the filter is at its maximum left to right. So this turns out to be very easy. If you really want to, you can go ahead at this point and put like a little bit of tape here at the top or the bottom, just making sure it's not going into the exposed window area. But for me, just keep it simple. There's really no need to be doing that. So we're going to take this filter out now that we have the right size. Cover this back up, and let's go ahead and clean up this filter a bit. So just make sure you have a really fine, clean microfiber cloth. We start by first just kind of laying it flat. You want to make sure that you don't rub this between your fingers with the cloth, because you could wrinkle the filter, which is pretty delicate. Okay, flip it over, do the same. Okay, I have this air blaster here, okay, and we are going to make sure your case back is on, by the way, as you're doing this. Kind of blast away on the filter. get any possible dust that is on the cloth off as much as possible. And then once that is done, go ahead and lift up, reinsert. Okay, again, we'll test it going down. Looks good. Can't really move it any further up. And then left and right looks good. Also want to make sure that these edges of the filter are not riding on top of the frame, because I don't want the filter to kind of bend awkwardly and not look flat. So we're good there. Now you're going to go to your pushers here. Now you see how we have the pusher, which are these buttons. You want to push on the inside, and sometimes what will happen is you'll have, with this particular watch, the pusher does not spring back out. Some watches, like the Casio World Time that I showed earlier, they naturally spring out, but it's always just a good measure regardless to go to your pushers on the inside and lightly push them in to out to make sure they're really pushed outward. So that way when you insert your module, the module sits, correctly inside the case. So that one is out, and that one is also out. Okay. Then we're going to take our module, make sure you're in the right orientation. We know that the notch here is the 12, so that will pertain to this part going to that side. Check this display over here for any possible dust. So I'm going to give this a quick blast off camera. And we're just going to reinsert the same way we put in from top to bottom. So, and then we'll just push down like so. Okay. Now, when it comes to here, the pushers hit these contacts, that thin piece of metal here, here, and over here. Now, what you want to do is you want to put a little bit of pressure with your finger, and then at the same time, kind of push inward on those metal contacts. And what you'll notice is the module will kind of drop down a little bit further, and then the inside of this pusher will become more visible and allow it to function properly with the module. So we're going to push with the left finger. Saw how that sat down, and then now you can see the inside of that pusher hitting that contact properly. We're going to repeat for the others one. Okay, if you can't get to that, take something else that's thin, just pull inward and pull inward over there. So now we're good, and you want to do that for every single pusher that you have on the watch. Okay, then we're going to take our O-ring. Rotate the O-ring in the light. You can see we have a nice glisten here. Of course, this is a brand new watch, so the oiling on this is already good. No need to do that. If you have a very dull looking O-ring in the light, it probably needs some lubrication. If you need to, you want to use 100% silicone oil for that, just because silicone oil does not eat away at rubber, unlike other things like mineral oil. So we're going to take this O-ring. For this one, it doesn't matter if we're going from this way or we're flipping it this way. What only matters is that that little tooth on the O-ring is facing up top. Okay, we'll set the O-ring inside of its trough here. Okay, and then go around the O-ring and look for any particulates or solid pieces, because you don't want any of that. It might compromise the water resistance rating. So right here at the top, you'll notice there's a little piece of dust. Probably won't do much, but we'll just get that out of there. Want a nice clean seal. That looks good. Go to the bottom here. Take that little piece of dust off, and then reposition our O-ring again. And that looks great. Take your case back here. Again, this is 12 o'clock here at the top. So this is the orientation of the case back. We're going to lay that here on top like so. Okay, and then kind of push down over there. Rotate our watch to the side like this. Okay, go ahead and take those screws. Or actually, before you do that, put some pressure on the case back. We're going to rotate the watch around, and we're going to take a look at our filter. So, things you want to check out for. I want to lift the watch up, down, left, and right, and I want to make sure I have full coverage of that filter extending all the way out. I don't want to see any exposed display underneath. So we have maximum coverage, which is great. Okay, then I want to look at, from the side over here, check for any dust that might have settled inside of the display. And if you see anything, just go ahead and reverse the process, take out everything again, clean up the dust, and reinsert everything as we've done. Okay, that looks great. We're also checking for any possible fingerprints. Again, the best thing is to use gloves if you have them. And then finally, I want to make sure that the module is sitting flush and flat inside of the case. I don't want to see the display being angled or the module being angled in any obscure way. So that looks pretty good. Okay, so this is a good reason why we do this. Right there, I see a tiny bit of dust that escaped us. So we're going to open this up really quick. So that was at the 12 o'clock position. Lift up again. Go to our filter here, gently lift this out without bending it. Okay. Okay, and you can see here the dust is actually inside the frame that's molded into the case. So it escaped me a little bit, so I'm going to flip this upside down. Try to blast that out. It's kind of tricky with this one because the frame has a little bit of a gap between the top of the frame where the printing is and the glass, so the dust can get a little bit trapped in there. So I'm not used to doing that with the world time because the masking comes out. So that's something new I'm learning, is I have to kind of rotate the watch like this and check that little shelf at the top for any dust. So now I don't see anything in there. So now we'll put this back. Okay, take our filter again, quick blast, reinsert, push to the top, push to the bottom, we're good there. Take the module, push our pushers out, put our module in the right orientation, reinsert down. Push and pull inward on those contacts. Okay, take a look at our O-ring. Check for dust, check for positioning. That looks good. Take our case back. Loosely put this on, add some pressure, and rotate here. Okay. Check our filter and dust again. Okay, you can see that dust is gone. Gone. Clear and clear. Perfect. So we're good. Now we're going to check the functions on this. That's the bottom left button for this particular Casio. The sound is working, so that's a good sign. If you happen to remove the module, you can know that your spring is properly inserted by that sound. Good. Okay, let's check that backlight. Great. And then finally, the 24-hour time adjust works perfectly. So all of our pushers are interacting with that module properly. We can go ahead and flip this back over. Go ahead and now take your other screws and we can insert this back. So it gets a little bit tedious, to check for dust, take it out, do it over, but you want to make sure it's done right just to get that really clean look. And it's also a good reason why we don't put the screws on until we've double checked the display from the outside, because it's easier to pick up dust when you have something to superimpose it against. Okay, we'll go ahead and tighten these in. Okay, I'm going to loosely tighten this just when it hits the back of that case back. Not fully tightened yet. Oh God, this screwdriver is terrible. Make sure you're not cross-threading. Okay, so this is loosely connected. Now what we're going to do is check the perimeter between the case back and the case. I want to make sure that the O-ring is not being pinched because, of course, that will compromise the water integrity, so that looks good. Now I can fully tighten, but not too tight because the threads for these screws are resin and not metal. And so it can be very easy to strip those screws. Okay, that looks great. Perfect. And then what I'm going to do after this is check out the time zone that TJ's in and adjust that for him and get this sent out. So that case back we talked about before, you can see here we cleaned up a good amount of that, factory goo, I guess. So kind of want to get this just a touch more clean before sending it out. So you can take just a tiny bit of alcohol here. Okay, you don't want this dripping wet. Okay, flip this over. Just lightly dab the back. Okay, take the dry part and just kind of wipe it clean. Get those pushers as well. Okay. Now, for the front of the display, this is like a resin glass. It's very fragile. I really don't recommend putting alcohol on the top to clean it. If you get some dirt or debris, maybe a light soaping with your hands and the soap in your hands. But you want to just be very delicate when you go ahead and clean the top because it's very easy to add a hairline scratch. So what usually scratches, just like a car, is when you go to wipe the area of the glass and then you end up grinding debris into the glass. So to minimize that, I take a blast of air first, kind of remove as much as I can, and then I go in and kind of gently get those small fingerprints off like so. Okay, if you end up getting hairline scratches, again, to be expected on a watch at this price point, but if you really care about getting those off, you can buy something like this, Polywatch. Polywatch is not really used at all for something more complex like sapphire glass, but this works very, very well on mineral glass such as this, or resin glass. Okay, so we got that all clean. Let's go ahead and do a quick wrist shot for you. There's that cool luminescent effect you get. Let's check the backlight. So the backlight still works, and I don't think it changes the color of the backlight. You still get that orange effect. All right, so very easy, quick, simple mod, guys, on a very, very affordable watch, and adds a little bit of fun and uniqueness to your piece. And again, these holders are relatively cheap. If you don't like it or you get bored, easy to change out and get a new look. I'm going to put the description for as many of these parts as I can find in the description below, and as well as the filters. And if you have any questions, please put them down as well. If you could subscribe to this channel, as well as my Instagram in the description and TJ's page, that would be greatly appreciated. And as always, have fun, and I'll see you guys on the next one.